I'm Shane Larson with Rock Energy Cooperative in Janesville, Wisconsin. Welcome to Along Those Lines.
Support for this podcast comes from Meridian Cooperative, formerly known as SEDC. With over 4 decades of experience under their belts, their new brand and name are part of their renewed commitment to providing outstanding support and innovative solutions to cooperatives.
Hi, everyone. This is a podcast about electric cooperatives, the work they do, and the challenges they face. I'm your host, Scott Hoffman. Ransomware became a household word earlier this year when the Colonial Pipeline, a major fuel delivery source on the East Coast, was shut down for several days after hackers attacked the company's billing system. These highly disruptive and costly network intrusions are on the rise in the United States and globally, and businesses across the spectrum are being targeted. So how can electric cooperatives avoid being victims of this sophisticated malware, and what should they do if they are attacked? To answer those and other questions, we have Ryan Newlin, NRECA's Principal for Cybersecurity Solutions, and Dave Eisenreich. He's a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigations in their cyber division, and that group's liaison to the energy sector. Ryan and David, welcome to the podcast. Appreciate you coming on.
Awesome. Great to be here.
Thanks so much for having us, Scott.
Okay, Dave, I want to start with you. Let's start with just a simple definition of ransomware. What is it and how does it work?
So I think the easiest way to think of it is just a digital malware, right? That essentially encrypts the victim's system, right? It's a tool that can be used for these bad actors to get what they want. How does it work? Well, generally you ingest it. There's a number of ways. It could be a business email. Spoofing email is usually one of the most common ways. There's other ways. And then once it's in there, it essentially encrypts your data. It's generally the way I've seen it the most. And it's appropriately named, not a lot of imagination there, holds you for ransom, right? And you'll know that you've been held for ransom. Something will pop up on your screen. You'll either be very polite or very impolite, depending upon the actor group, basically saying, hey, if you want your stuff back, pay us this amount of money, usually in cryptocurrency.
Okay, and this is something that any business, any government agency, even any individual who has a connection to the internet is technically vulnerable to, right?
Absolutely. Nobody is immune. Like you said, government, private, whether you're a philanthropic organization or whether you're a purely for-profit organization, these ransomware actors, these malicious actors, it's a business to them. They are in it for the money and no one is exempt.
Okay, let's turn to you, Ryan. What have we at NRECA been doing to sort of help electric co-ops combat these attacks and know what to do if one does happen?
The first thing that you have to know is what you have in your environment, what could be at risk, how do you back those things up? NRECA has done some self-assessment tools with the RC3 program that has helped people to be honest with themselves. They sit down with all departments, whether it's finance, HR, IT, puts us all in the same room and helps us to understand what our role and responsibility is as it pertains to IT. By identifying those things, then shows us what critical systems are in place and what we should do to secure those, safeguard those, and know what would happen.
Dave, let me kick it to you now. I'm sure companies get in touch with you all the time, either before or after an attack. What is your sort of line of advice in terms of how to avoid these?
So I think that's the paramount question, right? An ounce of prevention is certainly worth, several $1 million a year. And to start with, it's always a business decision, right? So it depends upon the size of the company. And I really do understand that. And I try to be sensitive to that when working with companies. But let's just start with the easy stuff, right? The basic cyber hygiene. So use multi-factor authentication, sometimes called two-factor authentication. Please baseline your network, right? How are you going to know what's not right if you don't know what's right? Do the easy stuff. Get rid of accounts, credential accounts when employees let go or fired. There's more complicated things you can do. You have a lot of remote work access now. Try to monitor that and see if somebody is accessing from where they should be.
Okay, and one of the things I sort of want to get out there for our listeners is if you're a co-op or really any business or government entity and you do get attacked, if you go to the FBI, what is the actual process? Can you sort of walk us through what happens there?
Yeah, and so I appreciate the question. Just a very brief discourse on sort of how the FBI model works. Obviously, there's IC3 where you can report sort of smaller attacks. We also have 56 FBI field offices, and they're located in all the states. Some states have multiple field offices. In addition to those 56 field offices, there are smaller regional field offices for some larger states. These satellite offices are called resident agencies. Every FBI field office has a cyber squad with cyber professionals on it And in addition to that, a private sector coordinator whose sole job it is to have relationships with companies before a cyber event happens. And so the first thing I just really want to stress is the worst time to try to get a relationship with somebody is during the middle of a crisis. That's not just true for cyber, that's true in general, right? So I really encourage you to reach out to your FBI field office, just start that relationship. Let's say you've done everything you can do and you're the victim of an attack. The first thing, I think it gets lost a lot these days, especially in the high profile attacks, is you are a victim. I really stress that last part. You didn't choose to have this criminal activity directed at you. So the FBI treats victims like victims. And I think that's really important. And so we're going to work with you to not disrupt your business. We're not going to seize your assets when you're the victim and grab all your servers and computers and shut down everything that's going on. We're going to work with you to gain the evidence that we need to try to attribute this and eventually bring these people to justice. We're only there to get the information, the data that we need to move the investigation forward and try to bring these bad actors to justice. What I would ask you to do, in addition to have a relationship for IT professionals with the FBI, is make sure you have a good relationship with your legal department. A lot of companies that I've worked with and agents in the field that do these investigations, your first call might be to your cyber remediation professional, but your second call is almost certainly going to be to corporate counsel, or if it's a smaller entity, to whoever you have on retainer to do this. And they really should understand what your plan of action is going forward, so they're not learning how to fly the plane at the time the incident occurs. Obviously, we can provide you with some documents, Scott, that you can share with your members, that victim incident response checklists, that they can see the things that we're actually going to be asking when we come. But basically, what I want to get through is, 1, you treat victims like victims. 2, you try to minimize disruptions to your business, your network. 3, we will work with you in confidentiality up to the point that we can. Right? There's a prosecution, and even up until the point of grand jury. At some point, we might have to, if it goes in that direction, talk about it. But until then, you're the victim. It remains confidential.
That's great, Dave. I appreciate that. So, Ryan, you have a fairly long history in the IT field, and co-op IT specifically. Co-ops usually have separate systems for their office network and their operational network. Can you talk a little bit about the vulnerabilities of each?
Sure. So first and foremost, there are vulnerabilities in each. That's important to know. And anytime that you have people, machines, and a network, then you're potentially going to have some type of issue or the chance or potential for an issue. So with it being yes, it's not a matter of if, it's when. And we all need to understand that. And it's not necessarily to be scared of it, but to be aware of it, right? Cybersecurity is so scary because a lot of people don't fully understand it, or it's a big question mark, and what's in the dark is kind of scary. So I personally like to take the approach of don't be afraid of it, just be prepared for it. So with that being said, someone somewhere is going to be compromised. It's happened and it's going to continue to happen. The big problem with it is that ransomware is very profitable. Once they figure out how to do that and have the software or the malware that allows them to do that, then it's a matter of just getting in and pushing the button and duplicating the effort you did on the previous person, right? So there's a lot of money in it once you have those softwares in place. So in this particular situation, you want to know that you have people and processes put in place to mitigate that beforehand. But if it happens, to be prepared, like they were saying before, you want to be prepared and have those relationships set up. So having those conversations about what has happened and how to take care of those and take care of other co-ops. And when I say take care of other co-ops, I'm talking about that cooperation among cooperative, right? You have those principles that we swear by and live by, but you need to somehow give lessons learned. What you've gone through is very important to share with the co-op space for people that have not gone through it before, but they realize what's going on. And the problem that we have with that is that people don't want to share that information because then it shows that you've been compromised and you get embarrassed, or you don't want your company's name to be thrown in the newspapers, right? Or be negative in a co-op space. So having a way to anonymize that or make sure that those people aren't drugged through the mud, but rather lessons learned and that we grow. So I spent 20 years in the military, and every time we get done with a mission, we do lessons learned. And you do 3 up, 3 down. What was the 3 good things? What are the 3 bad things? And how can we make that mission better? And that takes all of us to come together and talk about that. So we can't be afraid to do that. And there are things that NRECA and our nation as a whole, coming from military, co-op, and now into the NRECA space, is that centralizing cyber and finding central hubs that can help is something that we're trying to move towards. I'm passionate about that because you have smaller distribution co-ops that may not have IT and they farm that out to an MSP or maybe even an MSSP. But how do those people actually fight cyber? And how do they do it on the corporate side? How they do it on the OT side? And we are definitely trying to fit that need and make sure that those things are met. So say a printer is sitting in place and it has wireless and it's connected on the OT side and the corporate side. But a lot of people don't secure that printer, right? Or they wouldn't even think about it. Or maybe they printed something and it's on the hard drive of the printer and that printer is compromised. So little things like that, knowing that you need that segmentation or that line of demarcation to tell you between the co-op and OT side, and how do you handle that ransomware, whether it's on co-op or maybe it did pivot over to the OT side.
That's actually the best example I've heard of how those gaps can get bridged by this ransomware. That's a really great point. Let's pause briefly there for a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Colonial Pipeline attack and why utilities make particularly attractive targets for ransomware hackers.
Support for Along Those Lines comes from Meridian Cooperative, a technology company that goes beyond CIS and FIS to secure your network, empower your field crews, connect your departments, improve operational efficiencies, extract insights from your data, and engage your members like never before. To learn more about the innovative technologies Meridian Cooperative is rolling out, you can find them online at meridian.coop.
I'm Norma Walls from Crawford Electric Cooperative in Bourbon, Missouri. You're listening to Along Those Lines.
Welcome back. David, I wanted to kind of turn it back to you and talk about, over the last few years, we've heard a lot about these ransomware attacks. The Colonial Pipeline attack earlier this year, very high profile event. Have you noticed, are they increasing recently? And would you say that utilities like the Colonial Pipeline, like electric cooperatives, are they particularly attractive to ransomware hackers in any way?
Scott, unfortunately, it's not a good news story. They are absolutely increasing. I think our data from 2020 showed a 200% increase. A lot of that's based on IC3 data, which, keep in mind, that's literally the tip of the iceberg because, as Ryan said, a lot of folks just don't report, right? And so we think that's an accurate representation in terms of increasing, but that's the tip of the iceberg of how frequent these things are.
Hey, Dave, can you just give us a quick update on what IC3 is?
Yeah, there's actually the Internet Complaint Crime Center, which compiles statistics and data on specifically these types of things: ransomware, business email compromise, other types of cyber attacks, old school DDoS, all of the above universe of cyber. And unfortunately, Scott, the numbers are going up, and there's lots of good reasons for it. I don't think that's going to get better. In addition to IC3, a lot of private entities that we have close relationships with also do tracking, and they also see substantial increases in these types of attacks. And I think utilities, to kind of answer the second part of your question, and businesses that provide real-time services, I call it criticality of time. You can't be down for very long, right? I mean, that's affecting people's lives right that minute, right that hour, right that day. And that certainly makes you a attractive target to a ransomware actor because you've got to act. You don't have the luxury of time on your side. And the other parts is simple. And I think, we talked about this, Ryan mentioned this as well, is that it's a business to these guys. And generally speaking, there's money to be had there, right? I mean, you've got a product that people want and revenue comes in and they think that it's a pretty good bet to attack because they think they're going to get paid.
Yeah, and I do want to get into that whole idea of how these things are paid and whether folks ought to pay these ransom. But I want to quickly go to you, Ryan. Without naming names, in your experience with co-ops, are you aware of co-ops that have suffered a ransomware attack and had to pay a ransom? Were you involved? How did it work out?
There's always going to be that ransomware attack, and whether you can handle it yourself or have to reach out or have a company on instant response, some type of retainer type stuff. The ransomware stuff that I've been involved with, I see a lot of the permission issues, and that's how it goes crazy in your environment. So say on your local machine, having admin rights on it, if you do get ransomware, it could just run amok on it. So I say what makes you good at work makes you good at home, and what you learn and what you do at home makes you good at work. So when I start talking about this stuff, it's not just the corporate environment. I believe it on a larger scale. I've worked in the military for 20 years and worked in the cyber stuff, and you hear what goes on at secret level stuff and you lose sleep at night. And I think that it needs to be thought of at the lowest levels because the attacks that happen in ransomware on companies can definitely happen in your personal life as well, depending on what your status is, what money, what they need from you. So when I start thinking of local admin rights, you need to lock that down and be just a normal user on it. Your network needs to have permission set properly so that if someone was to be compromised, it only affects parts of it. You need backups. So the main one that I had seen was a company that didn't have their permission set up. One person gets an email, they click on a hyperlink, next thing you know, they're there. This particular adversary stayed on the network for about 6 months so that they were a persistent threat, is what they call it, low and slow type deal, where they stayed in there 6 months. And what happened is all the backups had cycled out, right? You only keep backups for so long. So now the adversary's in there. So even whenever you do a backup and try and recover, they're still in the environment. They're just laying dormant where you can't find them. So going through this, recovered from backups and all of that, but then they got back into the environment because they were already low and slow, right? So now you're in this situation where you spent all this time and hours recovering from a ransomware attack, hopefully restoring to a point that they weren't there, but then they did it again. So what do you do at that point? How do you root them out? It's already encrypted. So sometimes you have to pay it. And I do this other thing where it's called, is the juice worth the squeeze? Right? You have to evaluate your business processes, and is it better to pay or is it better to try and recover? And sometimes you can't, so then you have to pay it. And what I've seen so far is that there is honor amongst thieves, and typically when you pay that stuff, and of course this is my experience, I see that once they pay it, they'll give you the key, because there's lots of questions, right? Like, I'm going to pay this ransomware in Bitcoin or whatever it is, and then they don't provide you the key. Well, pretty much all the ones that I've heard of and people that I've talked to is they pay it, they give the key, and they move on with life. And so when I say honor amongst thieves, that's typically what happens. Like I said before, it's not if, it's when. Someone somewhere in the co-op space, I'm always trying to reach out or help, or at least motivate and give encouragement that there are things that you can do. But I would say the biggest thing on this in the co-op space is don't do it alone. There are resources out there. There are people that you can call, and there's other co-ops. So if you look at linemen, right, when a tornado or a hurricane hits Florida, we send linemen down there to help because they need that help. And as a co-op space, we're critical infrastructure, and we're the backbone of the United States when it comes to electricity. And we help our brothers and sisters. And we shouldn't think of it any different in the co-op space. In this world where we're not for profits, we have to come together, and you're not alone in it. And I think from NRECA's perspective, trying to make sure that that communication is there and relationships are there, that you could reach out and potentially have cyber warriors at your fingertips to provide help and resources.
That's a great point. And the thing you were talking about earlier with honor among thieves, I want to kick that over to David as well. You know, is there an official FBI position on paying that ransom? Dave, from your standpoint, what's the advice that you would give? I mean, even if the FBI's official position says don't do it, you probably have some, experience with the mitigating factors that might lead a company to pay, as Ryan was just talking about. Can you walk us through some of that?
Sure, Scott. So as you might imagine, the FBI's official position is obviously don't pay it. Some very good reasons for that. However, we get that it's a business decision, right? At the end of the day, we understand that. I think Ryan's point is generally accurate. Some of the bigger actors will typically turn over the key when paid. However, some of the pitfalls to worry about, especially now with these sort of, I call them profit sharing partnerships, where you can go on the dark web and you don't have to have the level of skill, and you're not really worried about your reputation as a ransomware actor, because this is probably a one-hit wonder for you. So you can get some malware and hold some entity hostage, and in return, you have to share some of the profits with the group that provided you with the malware. I'm really more worried about them, because a lot of times, quite frankly, they don't have the technical proficiency to know how to work to do what they're doing. So even if they intend to give you the key, they may not be able to, and they're really also not worried about their reputation in terms of honor among thieves. They're just like, hey, I'm going to get whatever, 500,000, $1 million, take this hit. And especially a lot of these actors, most of them are from foreign countries where the economy is just not quite the same as here. Opportunities are not the same. That's a tremendous sum of money. That's a life-changing event. And for them, they're just going to look at it. If I can get one or two entities to pay, and I don't really care if I'm in this for the long haul. So there are risks associated with both. I do agree with Ryan. Don't go at it alone. Like it's got to be a whole of everything effort. We call it a whole of government effort here. All the different agencies work together, not just to impose risk and consequences, but to make sure that we share intelligence so that even if somebody's, unfortunately, you're on the hook for this one, maybe we can spare the rest of the group, right?
Right. So, Dave, I just want to get a sense from you where you see this ransomware trend going. I get a sense it's going in a bad direction, but could you guys kind of give us a crystal ball on where we're going with it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the logical evolution for something that's very lucrative is that it will increase. If you think about it, just from a educational standpoint or an available standpoint, as individuals become more and more technical, their ability to handle technical things increases. So you're going to have a larger group of folks that in theory could do this. Coupled with these for-profit sharing forums where you reach out to an expert for, say, 50% of the profit, you can get a malware tool and then move forward. I don't see how this doesn't continue to increase, and the statistics bear that out. I think we'll see that moving forward. It's also going to change too. I mean, I think we're just at the cusp of where, if you think about it, let's take something very simple, right? Like spoofing emails. Typically, they're crafted by people, right? The not good ones, which is another way of saying the poor ones, bad ones, you can usually tell, right? There's grammar and whatever. Some of the better ones are pretty good. We run tests all the time. You'd be surprised, as Ryan said, the number of people that click on the link. Now, let's bring artificial intelligence into that, which can amalgamate data from a variety of sources and make it look so plausible that I'm not sure that, most people wouldn't click on that link versus, just some percentage. So I think it's going to increase. It's going to get more sophisticated, more difficult. Attribution is already a problem, right? So it's going to take a combined, united effort to get ahead of the threat and to do the things we need to do to at least minimize their ability to impact critical sectors.
Yeah, that AI angle is not something I had thought about. That sounds fairly scary. Ryan, if you could kind of give us a sense of what you're telling co-ops now and what you figure you'll probably be telling them as the days unfold and ransomware becomes more and more prevalent. How are you talking to them about how to prepare for this and adapt?
Like I said at the very beginning, is awareness, understanding that if you have a network, if you have a device and you have a person, there's a potential chance for it to be compromised. Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. Understand what's going on. And let me explain a little bit of it's not if, it's when. There's been several times. Now, when I say a pivot means to compromise something and then pivot in a different direction. So if I was to tell you that 4 times removed, so if I had somebody I don't even know was compromised, they then use the email to email someone that they know. That person opens the email because it's from a trusted source. It's not even AI or someone they don't know, right? It comes from them. Then they pivot to another person and that person hits me up. And I open the email from a trusted source. So from this point, I'm getting something from Dave. I open it up, no big deal, click the link, click the attachment, whatever. But that's 4 times sent over to me from a trusted source. How did I know that that was going to be ransomware or that they were infected in some way or another? So essentially, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. It came from a trusted source that had pivoted 4 times. So when I say it's not if, it's when, it's not because you clicked on an email from someone you don't know. It could have been so cleverly crafted from someone else and came through the chain. There's so many clever ways to do it. I've seen it where adversaries change the icon on your desktop that launches Word. They embed it in there. So when you launch Word, it launches a malicious virus in your environment and they get persistent foothold. To say whether or not the evolution of this is happening or not happening, it's a no-brainer to me that it will continue to evolve and there will be more and more clever applications and people out there to beat whatever password technology there is or whatever it is, right? They're going to get in there. But the point that I'm making is that it's profitable. It has grown exponentially for a few years now because there's so much money in it. And if you encrypt something, how do you get it back without having backups or an alternate site that's completely segmented? But I can't stress enough, don't be afraid of it. Be ready for it and try and figure out what you do beforehand on having the legal side of it or having your media or communication site know how to properly address the, customers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that goes back to what Dave was saying about reach out to your FBI office, make sure that you have your plan in place. Really, really fascinating information. I appreciate you guys coming on. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Scott.
And thanks to you, our listeners, and to our sponsor, Meridian Cooperative. For more on this and other podcasts, visit electric.coop. Until next time, for Along Those Lines, I'm Scott Hoffman.
I'm Sheila Hodges from Clay Electric Cooperative in Orange Park, Florida. Thanks for listening to Along Those Lines. Subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcast app.